Welcome back to the Metro on WDET. I'm Kerry Jr. II, in for Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. Artificial intelligence is everywhere. It's starting to get to the point that you can't use a computer or web browser without some AI function popping up to try and make your life easier. Maybe easier. But how does AI show up in the places that we nurture human intelligence? Today, we're talking about AI in education. Students and teachers alike are using artificial intelligence, and it's not just for cheating or taking shortcuts. Tools like ChatGPT can help revise essays. They can solve complex math problems, speed up paperwork and data entry. The uses are limitless, really. And the consequences, well, those are to be determined. Will writing and critical thinking, essential elements of a quality education, go extinct in a world that is increasingly AI reliant? Can a student nowadays be successful in school and their career without learning how to use AI to their benefit? We want to start off with some on-the-ground perspectives. So we called up a couple of high school teachers to find out, how is AI showing up in their classrooms? First, we have Tom Steinman. He's a science teacher at Allen Park High School who's an early adopter of ChatGPT. He told producer David Lyons that he's embracing AI in the classroom.
I have my own class of special ed students that I do teach. It's called Essential Element Science. There's not a curriculum given. I was told what areas I should kind of go over. And honestly, I don't know what I would do without AI. Because AI, for example, there's one that's called Brisk. And it's for teachers. It could instantly create me a Google Slides, right? So I could tell it, I want to know about ions, right? We're learning, and it will create slides. I can tell it what grade level to put it at, right? If I know I'm at high school, but I have kids who struggle with vocabulary and stuff, I actually, for myself, I'm learning it, I'll often set it at a third grade level. I could say, hey, I want some guided notes. I could take a YouTube video with Brisk and have it create questions for me. It will create it, which is really nice, it will create Google Forms. So Google Forms are nice for assessment because if I have a Google form and they complete it, I get their grade right away, rather than if I created something maybe as a hard copy, I would have to grade it myself. Again, that takes time. You're talking so it really, AI has just allowed me to become much more efficient in my time and what I can do and give feedback to the students.
I'm curious about the potential downsides that we hear from skeptics about hallucinations in AI and ChatGPT.
Oh, yeah.
If you're using this to kind of generate some lesson plans and PowerPoints, for example,
Yep.
Do you have to fact check, or how do you approach that?
Oh, yeah. Yep. So you need a foundation. It's not going to do it all for you. You got to have some sense to you and know what's going on. What I do get scared of are students just relying on it. And I can tell, if you know your kids, you can tell when they used AI, right? That's what people are worried about. And the way I would just check is this doesn't sound like this kid would, if you know your kids, you'd be like, this doesn't sound like their tone of voice, or they would know what this word is. And I just ask them, what is this? If they can't explain it to me like they did in the paper, I usually know that, it's AI created.
That was Tom Steinman. He's a science teacher at Allen Park High School. Next up, we spoke with Janine Scott. She's a math teacher at Davis Aerospace Technical High School in Detroit. She isn't all in on AI, but she's not against it either. Instead, she takes a process-oriented approach with her students.
I am all for students using tools to help them think. So the problem, if you call it a problem, is they use it to cheat. And I try to explain to my students, I'm one of them teachers who will give you the answers. I don't care about the answers because I teach upper level math. I care about how you came across that answer. What tools did you use to get that answer? And do you understand the answer?
And how do you assess that when a student turns in an assignment or a test?
Well, most of the time, you got to show your work. And at our school, we intimately know our students. We know their capabilities. We even know how they think. And so when I see something that's suspicious thinking, I just ask the student to show me how they did it. If you cannot tell me how you solved a problem, you did not solve the problem. And so with my students, I tell them, if you are going to use those tools, don't use them to get the answer. Use them to show you how to get the answer.
Wise words from Janine Scott. She's a math teacher at Davis Aerospace Technical High School in Detroit. And we want to hear from you this hour, too.
Where do you stand on artificial intelligence in schools? Should students be able to use ChatGPT for school? Are you optimistic about AI in education, or are you worried? The number is 313-577-1019. Joining us now to help us better understand how artificial intelligence is changing education is Matt Miller, a former teacher and author of the book AI for Educators: Learning Strategies, Teacher Efficiencies, and a Vision for an Artificial Intelligence Future. Matt, thank you for joining us on The Metro.
My pleasure. Excited to be a part of the conversation.
Awesome. So education in the U.S. is facing some serious challenges, whether it's funding, staffing, absenteeism, class sizes, or politics. It's hard being a teacher right now. I want to talk about a few of the problems AI can solve for teachers. So let's start with the most precious of all commodities for K-12 educators today: time. One of the selling points of generative AI tools like ChatGPT is that they can save time. Why is time such a precious commodity for teachers, and how does AI change the time management equation?
Yeah, time really is the currency that teachers use to do the great things that they want to do in the classroom. I do workshops with teachers all over the United States, and every time I ask them, the big thing that's always standing in the way of them being able to do great things is time. And part of it is because we just continue to keep piling more and more things onto the plates of teachers. And so when they don't have time to do the stuff that makes instruction great, when they don't have time to meet with their students one-on-one and everything, then things start to suffer. And so, I think there's this misconception by some in school leadership that think that, if teachers get more free time to do things, that they'll just, squander it or whatever. But it's really, like I said, it's the currency that they use to do the really great things in the classroom. And so if we can take a task that maybe takes us, 20 minutes, and if we can shorten it down to 12 minutes, we've saved 8 minutes right there. And if you duplicate that over and over and over again throughout the week, even just a little bit of time, just like 8 minutes like that, there's a ton that teachers can do right there to support students. And it's usually the kinds of things that really make a huge impact on students' education. So yeah, from my own experience in the classroom to all those that I've talked to, time is the crucial factor. And if we don't get anything else out of generative AI other than giving teachers time back, then that's a win, I think.
I see. So AI helps teachers with time, but on the flip side, students, they have more free time on their hands. Do they really need more efficient tools for learning? Isn't that time spent figuring it out, isn't that time the essential part of learning?
Yeah. What you're talking about there is sort of a complicated issue because, students can use AI to do work for them. And they can use it to write, and they can do all these things. And I think the issue isn't so much that students already have free time and that this would free up more time for them. The question is what's going on inside of their brains. I love what the math teacher was saying as you introduced this segment. She wants to know if students are thinking. And so a lot of times the things that we really want students to do that help them to learn involve struggle. It involves work. It involves cognitively wrestling with new things. And if AI takes over all of that work, then it stands in the way of student thinking. It stands in the way of them being able to develop skills. And so in that way, we don't want students to do that because it doesn't develop the human. It doesn't develop the brain. It doesn't develop, who you are and what you're able to do. However, if students do use generative AI in a way that pushes their thinking, maybe it provides them feedback on writing. Maybe it asks them follow-up questions that pokes holes in something that they've just described. Maybe it encourages them to reflect on their learning. All of those are very healthy learning very healthy learning practices. And so if we can use AI to do that instead of, smoothing out all of the bumps in the road that really lead to student learning, I think that's the bigger issue instead of just more free time for students.
And so if students are implementing AI, how does the assessment process and grading process change?
It's tricky. It's messy because let's take essays for example. What we used to do in the past is we would send students home to write an essay, and they would come back and they would turn it in, and we'd take a look at it, and teachers would have a pretty good feel of whether the student did it or not. And the real reason that we were doing that is the product, the essay, was a way for us to see how students think, to see the way that they deal with complex thoughts and issues and problems and how they solve them. However, now with generative AI, if students can use something like ChatGPT to write that for them, now all of a sudden that assignment doesn't give us that data, doesn't give us that sort of insight into what the students have learned. And so for that reason, the assessment loses some of its value. And so I think that's going to be one of the big hurdles that we're going to have to deal with here is how do we assess? Now, if you ask a teacher what the real purpose of assessment is, it's not to stick a grade in the grade book. It's to see how far the student has progressed. It's to see where the whole class is and how far they've moved along and what we need to do next. They call that formative assessment. And so there are lots of ways to be able to do that other than grading student work in the same way. So really with the introduction of all of this generative AI, it's really just going to cause us to go back to some of those foundational, fundamental things about education. Why are we here? What are we showing up for? And how do we see that students have made progress?
Yeah, Matt, you did a really good job explaining that and helping us understand the real value of what we want our students to learn. You're listening to The Metro on WDET. I'm Kerry Jr. II, and I'm in for Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. We're talking about artificial intelligence in education. We're speaking with Matt Miller. He's a former teacher and author of the book AI for Educators, Learning Strategies, Teacher Efficiencies, and a Vision for an Artificial Intelligence Future. And we're taking your calls. Should students be able to use ChatGPT in school? Let us know. The number is 313-577-1019. And I'd like to go to the phones right now to Joe in Sterling Heights. Joe, thanks for calling the Metro. What do you think? Should AI be used in education?
Hi, guys. Thank you so much. This conversation's a really enlightening conversation, and I'm glad that you're bringing it up. And initially, I was thinking along the lines of the students, but as you were talking, you interviewed the teacher from Allen Park and also the teacher from Detroit Aerospace, and it made me wonder, along the lines of the educators, where does it end in the sense of, grading papers, lectures? Like, where is the cap on their end? I'm just worried that, you mentioned that the administrators might be worried about squandering time. The free time, to be truthful, I'm kind of worried about that. What is the stopgap for a good teacher versus a bad teacher in the sense that they're going to use too much AI?
Joe, thank you so much for calling and giving us something to think about here. Matt Miller, what do you make of Joe's concerns about AI in education being this slippery slope when it comes to educators?
Yeah, there's been a lot of conversation about that for sure. There's sort of this ongoing joke in some internet circles about, well, when the students use AI to write the papers and the teachers use AI to give feedback, then it's just a bunch of robots talking to each other. And what are we doing? And I think there's really something to that. But I think what we're missing out on here is that a good teacher makes connections with students. They pour a little bit of themselves into it. The student isn't really in it just for the comments that a teacher would write on their paper or the things that they would write on their test. I mean, education is still a very human practice, and it involves human connection and empathy and all of that. And I think if a teacher removes themselves from the process and they just have AI kind of doing all the things for them, then we miss out on that huge part. I mean, take it all the way back to COVID-19 when, we were doing remote teaching and, basically all of the parents afterwards were saying, we really want our student to go back with a human teacher. And if you even go back further beyond that into history, if education was just sort of an information transmission process, then the internet would have rendered education obsolete, and YouTube and Khan Academy and all of those things. But I think the human still has to show up. As from my experience in the classroom, it's sort of equal parts teacher and the student. The teacher has to pour into it, and the student has to as well. And they have to feel like they're meeting each other on an equal level. So yeah, we definitely have to be aware of all of the human components that go into it. There's sort of a saying in AI that we need a human in the loop. I think we even need more than a human in the loop. We still need that human connection. But if AI can sort of like support in that role and allow the basically overburdened teachers to accomplish more that's good for students, I think everybody benefits from that.
Matt, I want to talk about some of the other humans involved very closely in AI. The companies that own the leading AI technologies or the chips that go into them occupy the top 6 biggest companies in the world. Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI and ChatGPT, just rejected an offer by an Elon Musk-led group of investors to buy the company for $97 billion. Are you concerned that the optimism around AI is driven by those who stand to profit the most from it?
I think there's probably some of that, and I think that should definitely give us pause. And I think, one of the things that I always encourage educators to do and to do with their students is to always be critiquing AI. And that goes from the teeny tiniest little piece of a response that AI gives to one of our prompts, all the way up to the big picture of where does AI fit in society and what are the implications of it and everything. And I think if you look at you can look at it from that perspective, you can be uneasy about it. But I also look at it from the perspective of the impact that it can have on our overburdened, overworked teachers and their ability. I mean, really, we've been sort of at a crisis point in education with teaching for so long, where teachers are basically, overworked and unable to get caught up with all of the things that they're supposed to do, and all of these things are being put on them. And if this is a tool that can support them and help them with that, then I think that's an important thing to carry. There are all of these pieces to the AI conversation, and I don't think we can look at them in isolation. You just identified an important one of them, and I think we should hold that in one hand. But then I think we should also hold in the other hand, the pros and cons that it can have in a specific context like education.
So you see AI then as being a potential solve to education in America, which is in a crisis. What do we stand to lose if our education system gets artificial intelligence wrong?
There's a lot, really. I mean, one of the big concerns that I've heard from parents and from the community and everything is that we won't think for ourselves, that AI is going to make us stupid, that our problem solving and our critical thinking will all go away because we just outsource it out to artificial intelligence. So I think there's definitely a concern there if we don't get it right. I mean, there are data privacy concerns. There are online security concerns with our students. I think one thing we've got to be very careful about is which AI tools students are using and under what circumstances. In fact, on this program already, there's been questions about should students use ChatGPT. My answer is just a simple flat out no, because they're not old enough to use it under the terms of service. Now, do we know that they are probably using it? The answer is yes, but there isn't any sort of oversight. The AI models aren't trained for students of that level to try to protect them. In fact, we've even seen some examples of where AI models will send harmful messages to students if they're not trained appropriately. And also, if students aren't using some of these sort of tools that are developed for K-12 education. So I think there's lots of things. Bigger picture than that also is, sort of losing out on what makes us great as humans. Any of that stuff. I think if we don't get it wrong, I think there are bits and pieces of all of that can go wrong.
Thank you for helping us to think more deeply about this. Matt Miller is a former teacher and author of the book AI for Educators, Learning Strategies, Teacher Efficiencies, and a Vision for an Artificial Intelligence Future. Thank you for joining us on the Metro, Matt.
Thank you so much.
Coming up, what role should AI play in college admissions and the almighty college admission essay? And we want to hear from you because artificial intelligence is literally everywhere. What role do you think AI should have in education? The number is 313-577-1019. Stay with us on the Metro. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Metro. I'm Kerry Jr. II in for Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. Today, we're talking about artificial intelligence in education. Powerful generative AI apps like ChatGPT are increasingly common tools for students and teachers. And it's not just for cheating or taking shortcuts. Tools like ChatGPT can help write or revise essays. They can solve complex math problems and summarize chapters worth of material in mere seconds. The uses are limitless. And the consequences, well, we just don't know yet. Are writing and critical thinking essential elements of a quality education going extinct in a world that is increasingly AI reliant? Can a student nowadays be successful in school and their career without learning how to use AI to their benefit?
We talked about K through 12 education already, and now we want to talk about the crucial moment where a high schooler transitions to college. We're talking about the much feared admissions process. Is artificial intelligence leveling the playing field or flattening it altogether? Here to help us understand these questions is author and educator Ali Fadlallah. He teaches college success at Henry Ford College and works as an admissions coach for students aspiring to get into their dream colleges. Professor Fadlallah, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so you teach college success, as I said, in Dearborn, at Henry Ford College in Dearborn. Mm-hmm. Before we get into the artificial intelligence side of things, I want to talk about what makes a successful college student. So what is the most important lesson you want your students to take away from your class?
I want them to understand that college is about partially discovering a purpose and being purpose-driven. And if you can really turn in and focus on your internal health, mental wellness, sense of purpose in life, then the college thing takes care of itself. So it's really important to have that sense of direction. And it's also okay to not exactly know what you want to do early on and to give yourself the time and the freedom to explore your various interests.
So it's not even about the papers and assignments that they turn in to you.
That's right. It's about the critical conversations that we're having in class.
Interesting. So you also work on you work on your own as an admissions coach. What are you coaching, and what do you work with them on? How does the kind of purpose element that you're just talking about here factor into your work?
Yeah, thank you for that. I like to say from scratch to submit. So helping applicants to college and to graduate programs. I primarily serve the Metro Detroit community. So a lot of people are applying to medical, dental, PA programs, law school. But also a lot of people obviously making that important transition, like you said, from high school to college. And some are looking to secure scholarships locally. Some are looking to get into the Ivy Leagues. And I support all types of applicants. And It's everything from preparing those critical admissions essays to resumes to making sure they're getting strong letters of recommendation. Every aspect is so important because admissions are taking a holistic look at applicants.
And are you meeting with these with your clients like regularly to make sure that they have, as you said before, like they have to understand who they are and who they want to be? That's a lot of time. That's a lot of pressure. Like you've got to really spend time to nurture that within them. Is that how much of time? How much of this process and this coaching process that includes that?
For sure, yeah. So I always have free consultations. We hop on the phone. We keep in touch over time. I meet with parents. Some come to my office. Some we just keep in touch through the phone. But what most high schoolers who are applying to competitive colleges know is that they want to be in a very rigorous program. And they might have a general sense on pre-med, on pre-law. But even then, like we said, they don't always have to have it figured out in terms of what their major is going to be. But if they're academically driven and career driven, then that's usually a good enough starting point for us to prepare some great applications for college.
Are your students using AI to write their admissions essays?
So some are, and I don't advise using AI to write the admissions essay. When we take away all the fears, the biases, the concerns, and we strip it down to the basic definition, AI is artificial intelligence. It uses predictive language. Right? Those are things you don't want in an essay. You don't want to be predictive, or you don't want to be predictable. You don't want to be artificial, right? So, I think applicants to graduate programs better understand this. There's a healthy fear of AI. And, I always tell people your biggest fear shouldn't be that your AI essay is detectable. Your fear should be that you are not detectable. Like, where is you in this essay? Where's the personal in the personal statement?
It kind of sounds like we're going back to like before when original essays were written. You kind of have to have your own, like, what makes you different, right? And now that we have this technology that sounds like it might be a little bit harder to define that personal, as you're saying,
yes,
you got to kind of coach that. Or is it, I guess I'm kind of curious to know from your perspective, has it really changed in terms of coaching a student, or is it kind of the same, but maybe you drill it home harder because their first draft now is void of the personal element?
Exactly, yeah. That first draft is often void of that personal element. And so you really have to help them see that telling stories and articulating yourself in an authentic way, and also just pointing out to them, hey, listen, ChatGPT can do a really good job making things sound good, be grammatically sound, but it loves to recycle phrases, and you wouldn't necessarily notice. So if you're writing a hardship essay, it has a very common go-to line that says something like, well, this year was not without its hardships, or something like that. So that's a phrase that doesn't seem like it was, overly wordy or anything like that, but nevertheless, it's one that admissions people are going to recognize because it's always coming up. It's always a sentence starter, or mosaic of life experiences, or a tapestry of life experiences. Right? Some of those words are like go-to words in ChatGPT, and so helping
Don't
people
say tapestry.
Mosaic.
Right, exactly.
That's funny, those kind of cookie cutter language words. There's just like conversational words, like when people say piggybacking, it's like kind of cliche. And now AI actually has their own
exactly
category of words like that. That's hilarious.
Why is it again that you
Don't
loathe
like
piggybacking?
I don't. It's just so common now. I don't know. It feels a little cliche to me. I guess there's nothing wrong with the saying on its own. Okay. It's just, I don't know. It feels like when I've heard it so much, I don't know if you're actually being authentic or original, or if you're just kind of repeating what you've heard. And I think that goes to what you're saying AI is pointing to in these admissions essays.
Yeah,
right?
and it's so interesting that you said that, because it shows that it's not necessarily an anti-AI bias that makes people, get frustrated when they see this repetition. It's not that they're judging you per se for saying AI. They just don't feel like they're really getting to know you, and that's the most important part of a personal statement or an essay.
Yeah, that's fair. You're listening to The Metro on WDET. I'm Kerry Jr. II.
And I'm Robin Vincent. We're talking about artificial intelligence in education. Our guest is Professor Ali Fadlallah. He teaches college success at Henry Ford College. He also works as an admissions coach, helping students navigate the high-stakes admissions process, including their resumes, cover letters, and admissions essays. And we want to hear from you. Should students be able to use ChatGPT in school? Do you use AI to help you learn? Let let us know. The number is 313-577-1019. Graham Liddell sent us a voicemail. He teaches 3 writing classes at Hope College. He says that every semester there are more AI issues popping up with his students.
I would say at least half a dozen cases where I'm pretty convinced that a student has used generative AI to complete their paper. And it's become such a problem that I've decided to just sort of lay out clearly in the syllabus what is allowed and what isn't allowed with generative AI, because I think a lot of the students sort of see it as a gray area. But my rule is you can't do any copying and pasting from generative AI bot such as ChatGPT into your paper. The minute you sort of copy and paste anything, that is considered plagiarism. What's especially concerning to me lately is that a lot of students are using the program Grammarly to help them write their papers, which seems on the surface like a tool that could be really helpful. But Grammarly has features where it can take an entire block of the student's text and rewrite it in more sophisticated sounding or cleaner sounding English, which, the reason I have a problem with that is that it sometimes strips each student of his or her individual writerly voice, which is actually something I'm trying to cultivate in this class and not water down.
That was listener Graham Liddell. He teaches writing classes at Hope College. Professor Fadlallah, you advise students not to use AI to write their essays. But what about Grammarly that Graham Liddell mentioned his students use? Where do you draw the line? Is spell check okay? Please tell me it is.
Absolutely. No, I think even ChatGPT can be a useful tool for, let's say, submitting your essay to it and collecting feedback, like others have said on air today. So I think that whether it's Grammarly or ChatGPT, if you're using it in the correct way, for Grammarly, it is to correct that grammar, to get the sentence structure corrected to an extent. But rewriting sentences, once again, that becomes an issue of losing the voice in the process, losing the personality in the process. Some people will have ChatGPT write their essay and then feed it through apps like Write Human, I believe it's called, where it basically makes your AI non-detectable. So then they think they're striking a balance between, AI, kind of the robotic sounding versus the human sounding and can't be detected. But once again, they lose themselves in the process and their own stories, examples, details that really make them stand out.
The robots just don't have the same flavor, but maybe they may at some point.
Yeah, I think it's possible.
Let's go to the phones. Jim in Ann Arbor, how do you feel about AI in education?
Well, there's no getting around it. AI is here to stay. As long as we have power, we have the grid up, and we have internet. But what happens when that goes down? You're going to have people sitting on the side of the road scratching their head because they don't even know how to get home. We have a society that the education system is based on teaching people what to think, not how to think. And every individual has gifts, but if they're not taught how to think and bring them out and be a productive part of society, then you end up with what we have now. We actually have a situation where the people who are being deported from this country, who learn basic skills of how to navigate the world, are far more productive because they didn't grow up with a phone on their ear. And so they know the basic requirements how to get by. So they make better gardeners, better laborers, better carpenters. We need people to learn how to think. And
Jim in Ann Arbor, thank you so much for giving us a call and laying out some of what you see as the pros and cons of technology. Professor Fadlallah, what do you think? What's at risk if the art and the skill of the written word goes by the wayside. I know that hurts me to even ask that question as someone in journalism.
Yeah, this may be an unpopular opinion, but I think that there are teachers definitely operating within the constraints of their schools, and I can't fully appreciate that because I'm a little bit out of that world. I teach at the college, and I'm pretty autonomous in terms of what I can do curriculum-wise. With that said, I kind of liken ChatGPT to having the open book test back in the day. And for me, the teachers that let me use open notes and you can Google whatever, I learned a lot in those classes because the emphasis was on critical thinking and on articulating yourself. And so if we can maybe rethink how we're scoring students or grading students, putting disproportionate emphasis on conversation and on participation grades that are driven by, in-class discussions. And if we're inspiring them to want to write about something that they genuinely care about, that art of expression is never going to be lost. People are always going to want to articulate their feelings and thoughts. And if we're less stringent on grammar and sentence structure sometimes and more focusing, at least initially, on their ability to be authentic and true to themselves, then, I think if you just kind of reimagine grading to cultivate these skills that we want, the critical thinking, the self-expression, etc., then I don't think ChatGPT is our enemy. I think it can aid us in many ways.
You got to identify what it is we actually need from the students, and your jobs as professors and as coaches and as teachers to make sure you pull it out. So before we let you go, I have one question for you. Professor, do you have an alternative to piggybacking that I can use so that when I get into conversations and it comes up, I can avoid it because I don't want to have to say it?
I'd like to build on that.
Okay, build. Okay, I like to build on that. That's a good alternative. I'll take it.
Ali Fadlallah is an author and educator. He teaches college success at Henry Ford College and works as an admissions coach, helping students navigate the college admissions process. Professor Fadlallah, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you both. Much appreciated.
Coming up, is AI an equalizing force in education? We'll get more of your calls as well. The number is 313-577-1019. We want to hear from you. Go ahead and call in and stay with us because this is the Metro. We'll be right back.
Detroit Public Radio. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Carrie Jr. II in for Tia Graham. Today, we're talking about artificial intelligence in education. Powerful generative AI apps like ChatGPT are increasingly common tools for students and teachers alike. Tools like ChatGPT can write essays, solve complex math problems, and summarize chapters worth of material in mere seconds. The uses are limitless, and the consequences, well, we don't really know that yet. Skepticism is normal with something this new. ChatGPT was released just a few years ago, and in that time, we've learned that the technology hallucinates. In other words, it can just make things up, and serious questions have been raised about the future of work. At the far end of the spectrum, people worry that we will lose something essential about being human if generative AI makes its way into every facet of our lives.
But there's another side to the story, as there usually is.
Always.
An optimistic one, where AI helps to level the playing field, increase equity and access to education, and improve quality of life. Here to talk with us is someone who studies that potential and has experienced it firsthand. Mohammed Fusaneg is pursuing a PhD in educational psychology at the University of Maryland and works at the Disciplined Reading and Learning Research Laboratory there. Mohammed, thank you for joining us on the Metro.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So you have a really unique relationship with AI, and it starts in your 20s when you were in college as an undergrad studying political science. What happened?
Well, I had a few neurological conditions that started to affect me in my early 20s. I was normal straight A student. I was the president of our Model United Nations Club. My intention was to end up being a lawyer, but I started to develop these difficult migraines. They're called hemiplegic migraines. And so what those are very severe migraines that produce stroke-like symptoms that range in severity. So you'll end up having a migraine that might affect your ability to read, your ability to understand language, write, all of these things that we normally associate with our ideas of intelligence and how we can produce work and work in society.
Wow. This had to have been a very scary time for you. Hemiplegic migraines might sound rare to some people, but strokes and traumatic brain injuries are much more common. If you can describe what it was like to lose the ability to do things that you had for a very long time been able to do, reading and writing, things that, yes, if we're able to do these things, we take them for granted after some period of time.
Yeah, initially it was incredibly scary, and when they do come on, they still are. But I think there's like a real question about the self and how we interact with each other. Because before I had these experiences, I wasn't really sure. Like when you talk to somebody, you aren't really sure exactly what's going on behind the words that they're saying or all of the sort of context that they bring into their experiences. And so not being able to communicate, but knowing you have thoughts in your head or knowing that you have the ability to produce a certain level or quality of work, but not being able to do it at a particular time was incredibly impactful and also incredibly eye-opening about not just my condition, but how many other conditions that people have or extenuating circumstances that are limiting to them and how we judge them for it.
Mohammed, would you say that this experience made you a more compassionate person?
Oh, definitely. I think not only compassion for other people, but compassion for yourself, which I think also makes you more compassionate for other people as well. I think it offers you an opportunity, if you're able to reflect on it, to connect with more people that you otherwise would not have. So while at times you might have a limited ability to communicate, I think it's definitely broadened my ability to connect with other people as well.
Let's go back to those struggles, because what you ended up doing was turning to artificial intelligence. Tell us exactly what you did.
Yeah, so this was back before ChatGPT was invented, back in the GPT-2 days. My buddy and I, when I first started having these issues, we tried to see if we could find some solution. So we turned to early versions of what we consider deep learning and artificial intelligence nowadays. And we built out these little programs that would help me verbalize some of the things that I was trying to say. I had lots of information, lots of data from all of the essays and speeches that I had been working on before, and we tried to make a little system that would let me get my main ideas across when I could, when I was having an episode, and then allowing the AI to sort of help form the thoughts or bring in some additional information. And so I ended up with a friend of mine building out a little platform and software that allowed us to do just that. And that was really the first jumpstart, I'd say, into my foray into artificial intelligence.
You're listening to The Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Carrie Jr. II, in for Tia Graham. We're talking about artificial intelligence in education. Our guest is Mohammed Fuseneg. He's pursuing a PhD in educational psychology at the University of Maryland and works at the Discipline Reading and Learning Research Laboratory there. Mohammed, I do want to ask now, you told us about how artificial intelligence became a part of your life. Where are you now with it? Now that it's also more popularly used, what do you use now and how has it changed?
Yeah, so actually a lot of my research centers on working with students learning and artificial intelligence. So really trying to be at that bridge between how can we learn about how students learn and apply that to better improve artificial intelligence technologies, and then what do we know about artificial technologies today to help improve student learning. And so similar to what I had used earlier, I still use artificial intelligence when I'm having a minor episode or when I'm trying to, verbalize some thoughts that are difficult to process. But in terms of where I am now with it, a lot of the work is focusing on trying to uncover the reasons why students use artificial intelligence. Because, like my circumstance, I don't think it's as simple as everybody makes it out to be that students may be quote unquote lazy or attempting to cheat or whatnot. I think there's a lot of complexity here that underlies the sort of like motivations that students have. And I also think that this is a great opportunity for us, like some of the other contributors to the program were saying, a great opportunity for us to look at exactly why students are engaging in these activities that we might not believe to be beneficial. How can we make them knowledge builders as opposed to information managers, so to speak?
Got you. We want to go to the phones real quick. We're going to bring in some of our callers into this conversation. First, we want to go to Paul in Detroit. Paul, thanks for calling the Metro. How do you feel about AI in education?
Thanks, Kerry. Well, first, I want to thank you for having this conversation. I used to be a teacher, and I want to first push back from the caller from Ann Arbor who suggested that teachers are just trying to teach kids what to think and not how. That's an old trope. It's not true. It's not true. Teachers are not trying to indoctrinate kids. Teachers love children and want to help them have a great and wonderful, rewarding life and be a strong and thoughtful part of our society. So I think it's uncalled for and unwarranted. But also to the point, the idea is that it's an all or nothing approach. That's one of our great challenges, is that we often lack nuance when we have conversations about this sort of thing in our society. And when there are people, like, well, who could possibly figure out the hard to answer questions? Well, that's people like Muhammad. People are working on these things. And so giving people a chance, engaging with them as they do research to say, how can we support kids to use this as an incredibly useful and powerful tool for a number of reasons, whether it's accessibility or just needing some support. And when do we say, you're not doing the work anymore? We want you to know how to do this if and when you don't have the tool, and because it's important. You should know how to write a sentence.
Absolutely. We've heard a lot about today about the differences of making sure that students are really, really getting the critical thinking skills they need and not just relying on AI. Thank you so much for that call, Paul. We appreciate it. I do want to go to one quick caller. Once more, we have Janice in Warren. Janice, we have a few minutes left. Can you keep your response brief? But I'm curious to know from you, how do you feel about AI in education?
I think that over time, we've been able to adapt to different technologies, like hand drafting went to CAD and the online environment. We figured out how to use HiFlex for everyone. And so when I use it in the design class, especially for architecture, it doesn't take away the design abilities of the student. We still look at the information, analyze it, and then add to it and tweak it in our own way. So something like word art that I discovered in this Dell 3 software, where it actually generates a 3D design. You can input a sketch, and it kind of generates something for you, but it's not doing the work for you. We still have to look at it and use it as a tool. That's the bottom line here. It's a tool. And the ways of technology, we sometimes need to, we need to grab those and use those and see what they're like.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound like this is like a back and forth with educators. Like, it's almost like another thing added to the plate of educators and coaches. Is like, oh my gosh, now we have to give you the work, then you do use the tools, and now we have to double check the tools and make sure you're not relying on it too heavily. Thank you so much, Janice, for that call. We appreciate it. We've had a lot of good insight on this and a lot to think about. So back to you, Muhammad. I want to ask you, you're an example of how beneficial AI tools like ChatGPT can be. But as we've talked about, and as we've had our callers say, there's some skeptics out there about how far it can go. What are you skeptical of? What worries you about AI today?
To be honest, I think there's a lot to be skeptical of, and I think everybody should be approaching this conversation with a lot of healthy skepticism. I think this general idea that AI can come into the classroom and solve all of our problems is fairly immature. We're still trying to figure out exactly what those problems are at a deeper cognitive level. There's been a lot of research on what exactly is motivating students, how the home environment affects their learning, how access to food or their community influences their learning. And so this idea that we can just bring in AI to solve these problems and hypothetically replace teachers, I think, is incredibly wrong. We will never be able to replace the human connection and the sort of subtle, intricate learning that happens with a foundational relationship with a great educator.
Absolutely, Muhammad. I'm sorry to cut you off there, but we are running out of time. I just want to first say thank you so much, Muhammad Fuseneg. He's a PhD student in educational psychology at the University of Maryland. Thank you so much for joining us on The Metro.
Thank you.
The Metro is produced by Sam Corey, Carey Jr. II, and Jack Philbrandt. Our engineer is Nate Bender. Our senior producer is David Lyons. This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation.